Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. A few more minutes of fun with some white flowers today. We've been looking at various ways of creating white flowers, painting white flowers using colours, creating white flowers using stencil flipping. I will link all of those videos down below. And now we're going to put some white flowers over a background. So obviously it doesn't need to be the same backgrounds I'm using here. These are created with the marvellous Mattints, but I've also got a couple on the board that we created in one of the previous videos using watercolours. You might be putting this over design paper. It is the simple way to get yourself either white flowers or to get a background back to basics so that you can then build colour over it again. So these went white and then had some colour added. These went white and have pretty much stayed at white. But I wanted to show you very quickly, or remind you very quickly, about the beauty of these Mattints, the tinted transparent glazes from PaperArtsy. It's sort of like working with a permanent watercolour. And so you can get the same beautiful ombre effects that you get here with the watercolour, but they are completely and utterly permanent once they're dry. They look terrifying in the bottle, but they have been responsible for my journey towards colour, because as you use them, they actually start out very, very subtly. So I'll give you a quick look at how that colour builds. And one of the reasons I've been enjoying this so much is I'm sort of thinking about those magical times of day. Even the words make me happy. Dawn, dusk, sunrise, sunset, twilight, daybreak. These incredibly poetic times of day when light is shifting, when time is shifting between night and day. And yeah, these colours just lend themselves to that. So these are extremely fluid. You can probably hear that. It's almost watery. And I'm just going to put a few on the mat, a little palette of dots of colour, but I have to be very careful as I squeeze them, because they will emerge with gusto. In fact, squeezed just likes to come out even as you tip the bottle. This is Glow, which is like a sunset glow. If you'd ever told me I would be interested in a colour called Acid, I would have laughed at you. But these days, Acid is one of my absolute favourites. You can, of course, go blue-green with these. There's a bluish-greenish one there. But I think just to show you how these colours layer up, I'll stick to these sunrise sunset colours. So that's the Acid going on, and as you can see, it's the subtlest of shades. I'm just building through that palette that I've got here, and then I'll come back over and layer some colours over the top into the pink. And I'm just going to work some of that back down into that sunset, and then maybe just a little bit of this Foxglove at the other end for a bit of depth. And that I might also bring back down. So as you layer one colour over itself, it will simply intensify that tone. When you layer one of these colours over the others, they start to take on the glow of, there it is, the pink, just arriving through there. I've got a bit of muck on my brush, can't be helped. There we go. So that's very much, that feels like a daybreaky kind of one to me. Or dawn could be. If I put in a little slightly bluer colour at the other end, I could probably build something a little more twilighty. So let's start this one with that lovely Bellflower. Beautiful, subtle tones. And as you can see, I'm just going back and forth and back and forth, letting those colours merge. That's a little bit of squeezed, which is the orangey tone. But as you can see, it's taking on those pinks. But that's a, oh, look at that, for a sunrise sunset kind of affair. Those liminal times of day, liminal meaning at the borderlands, changing from one thing to another. That's very, very bright, that Foxglove. Foxglove is one of the newer colours. I haven't played with it quite as much, but it's magic. Sorry, there's still bits of muck coming in off the mat, can't be helped. So you can see, you can build lovely, lovely layers of colour with those. Let's go one more, just because hydrangeas are quite purpley. I'm just thinking I might have one more bluish twilighty sort of one. So that's River Deep. So that's really giving us the blue of night starting to come on. Let's layer in a bit of that purple. Let's see what happens if we put Foxglove and Night together. Yeah, beautiful. I might brave a couple of those yellows just down at the bottom. That's quite dramatic. But if I come back in with this, then that's going to soften the contrast between them. And it's a really meditative process as far as I'm concerned, just watching colours layer up and finding out which layers give me the most joy. I need to clean that one as well, just bits of gunk on the mat. We'll clean it before the next stage. So that's as simple as 3 backgrounds. As I say, you could absolutely do that with your watercolours. You could even do it with some acrylic paints. You could do distress ink backgrounds. Whatever backgrounds you've got, this method for the white flowers is just going to allow you to put them over any kind of background you like. Let's do it. There we go. These go on in such thin layers that they dry very, very quickly. I've given them a quick blast with the heat gun, but really they were almost good to go straight away. One of the main differences between these and some of the other, there are other transparent tinted glazes around, but they mostly tend to be glossy and they'll also resist paint. These are matte, so you get this lovely matte finish, and it's the perfect surface for painting on, stamping on, inking on, any of those things. I'm thinking we might work with one of these and one of these for now, and start to build up to some of these more finished postcards that I've got here. As I said, I'm probably going to do a big old postcard stamping session to finish things off. Let's have you. You're very pretty. And we'll take one of the watercolour ones from the other day, so you can see this doesn't have to be a specific background. I'm going to use my Hydrangea stamps, Alison Bomber AB057 from PaperArtsy, and maybe layer them up over a bit of the stencil as well. You have seen the stencil in action in the stencil flipping go, and on a couple of these backgrounds I have just put in a bit of subtle neutral fade into the background stenciling. But yeah, maybe if I can find the stencil somewhere here. Oh, let's not worry about it. Let's go straight for the stamping. You can see what it is if you've got that layering up in the background as well. So let's get a stamp on here. If you're nervous about painting over your stamps with an opaque paint, which is what we're going to do, the magic ingredient being white paint, then you could absolutely use a stamping platform, which I mean you can get back to the detail later. Well, let's do that one time. It's quite difficult to get the stamping platform all visible on camera. It's one of the reasons I rarely do it. Also, I'm just used to working by eye. It also means I have to be careful if I want to stamp sort of slightly off. I just don't have as much flexibility with where I want to position things. If it's not down in the corner, it doesn't necessarily hold terribly still. And I'm not sure I want that coming all... Well, we could do that. Okay, we'll do that. There it is. So held down by those magnets. There goes the little train. I think they wait until I'm filming to do it. There we go. So I'm going to ink that up, I think with some olive. Oh no, maybe. Well, so let's do a double inking. This is what I mean about having the stamping platform. I'm going to go all over with green. So this is Olive Archival. And then I think what I'll do is just tip in a little bit of Night Sky just over the flower areas. So I'm just hitting the petals. I'm leaving that stem as it is. And over I come, straight in. Good stamping, doesn't really matter because I can always come back and do it again because I'm on the stamping platform. Grand. There we go. I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you can watch the painting process. There it is. So another reason I tend not to use the stamping platform is, as you can see, I like to do multiple stampings on one card, and in order to position that where I want it, I would have to lift it up again, and I'm going to have to go back down and print again and stamp again and get the paints out again. So I'm perfectly happy, really. Come on, paint. It's nearly empty. I go through Snowflake, nobody's business. It's my all-time favourite white acrylic paint, Snowflake, Fresco, chalk, acrylic. Ingredients will, as always, be down below. But one of the keys to this is using it in a slightly watery mix. I don't want it hugely watery, but I want to have just a little bit of watery control. So I'm both using a water brush and I've given it a little spritz of water. So again, I'm going to try and work in the shapes of those petals. And again, it's practice for the day when you might want to paint your own flowers freehand. So yeah, it's quite good that I'm on the stamping platform because I've worked in quite an opaque mix there and some of the detail is going away. So I'm going to put a little bit more water onto here so that you can see immediately that now I've got the flexibility to choose how much water I've got in my mix. So again, just over here. And I don't really want a fully opaque white. I quite like that there's already a bit of shading coming through from that background. That's another reason why I like these sunrise, sunset colour backgrounds, is that the colours you've got leaking through are already quite reminiscent of hydrangeas. So it gives you that sort of echo between the foreground and the background, which for my money is a lovely harmony to have going on. You could, of course, go absolutely bold contrast between the front and the back. But I think I'm in a slightly gentler mode than that. So I'm going for harmony rather than contrast today and keeping things sort of in areas that are quite close around the colour wheel. So areas that are near to one another on the colour wheel will be harmonious. Sorry, colours that are near to one another on the colour wheel will end up creating a harmonious feel. Colours that are way distant, opposite one another, will create contrasts. You can see as that's drying, because it's a watery mix, Snowflake used neat is very opaque, but because I'm using it watery, you can see that as it dries, it kind of fades away. You can see on that one, that's dried a lot more see-through. So it's up to you. You can put another layer on, as I'm doing here, or you can leave it in that lovely soft see-through colour with those sort of hints of the pinks and the blues coming in from behind. I'm going to do a little bit of rough dotting of these little flowers in between. So it's sort of a petiolaris, this one. I've got petiolaris in the garden, which I love. It's gone over very quickly this year because of the heat. It got scorched, and so some of the hydrangeas, if I do another little intro, you'll see some of the hydrangeas are going strong and really having a great year. But the petiolaris, I think, got caught in the very hot sun early in the summer, and so it's already doing its fading. But as you'll know, I love faded hydrangea petals too. So once you've got your white flowers, you then have the ability to layer colour back over them as much or as little as you want. You can tint from the centre of the flowers to create that lovely graduated look, or you could just leave yourself nice white hydrangea petals. I do love a white hydrangea, as you'll have noticed in the flowery introductions that we've had recently, going to and from flowers from the garden and flowers on the craft table. I'm very fond of a white hydrangea. So that to me is already a pretty effective look. Clearly I want some greens. I'm not going to use Mattints to build up my greens because they go on in such delicate layers. You'd be here for some time before you got enough of a layer to get your greens on the go. So I could do this with a distress ink. I could use that over the top of these Mattints. But I think what I'm going to do is, maybe since it's nearby, I've got peeled paint. Oh no, it says it's frayed. Oh, so this is one of the old frayed burlaps distress paints from literally years ago. And yeah, some of those turned a lovely green shade. Well, it might be quite nice actually. I might as well use it. It's perfectly usable as paint. It's just changed colour. So what I might do is put a little bit of that. That's going to give us a slightly autumnal feel. So I might mix in a bit of something slightly greener. But that's going to be very good for the stem, I think. So again, just not pressing down at all so that I get the very fine nib of my brush doing the work of putting in those stems. I rather like that as a colour actually. It's a sort of grey-green, so of course I like it. I'm going to dot some bits in between here, and then we might get ourselves a slightly brighter green to go with that. But that's really nice as a starting point. And I think what I'm going to do is just put a bit in the centres of these flowers, because I like that softness to it. It's not such a vivid green that it's stealing my eye from everything else that's going on. Let's see. I've got lots of things on top of my paints, so I can't get them easily. Oh, look, here, this will show you. You could even choose to watercolour on top of these. So these are some of my Daniel Smith watercolours out in a tray. So I could absolutely use those to add some colour. They'll also paint over the top of Mattints. I had great trouble pronouncing Mattints when they came out, because I wanted to emphasize the matte-ness of them, because I do like a matte surface. So I was saying Mattints, Mattint. And then Leandra, Mrs. Paperartsy, they're originally from New Zealand, and she said, no, they belong to me. They're Mattints. Yeah, so that is the definitive pronunciation from the person who came up with the idea of the Mattints. They are Mattints. But what I can do is use a little bit maybe of this Bellflower. So this is going to tone in with the background. We had a little bit of this in the sky. And because, again, this is this beautiful, subtle... I know it doesn't look it when it's on there, but it honestly is. In its first layer, it's barely there. So I'm just going to add a bit of that to the centre of some of these leaves. The white's not quite dry in places, but that's fine. It's going to mix and blend in. And I'm just going to use that purple to deepen some of these flower petals. So having got back to white, you can then create those same gradations and shadows and other possibilities that we've been talking about as we build white flowers, but use colours to shade them and bring them to life. That's quite nice. And you do get such colour variation in hydrangeas. I'm quite sad that the really multicoloured one that changes colour within its own flower heads hasn't flowered this year. I think, again, it just got scorched at a... Oh, actually, no, I decided that was a frost. We had a very late frost. It's been bonkers, hasn't it, this year, the weather? Just quite frightening. There we go. And then again, of course, with little bits of paint, you could choose to do extra deepening, or with the white that we've still got on here, we can choose to do some of those highlights that we've looked at. So just sort of choosing where a petal might be catching the light at its edges or along the tops, just adding another little white highlight to shade and colour what's going on underneath. So a very simple technique, basically, to get your white flowers over busy backgrounds or simple painted backgrounds or inky backgrounds. If you go over an inky background, of course, that ink remains reactive to moisture. So you might want to set it with a bit of wax first, but then that's quite difficult to paint over. This is why using a more permanent colour medium on your background will give you more possibilities later. So I might do a couple more of these because, as I say, it's just lovely, meditative immersion in the beauty of nature's designs. That seems quite pretty to me. There we go. And yes, I will show you that to me doesn't need much more bringing back into detail. I like the softness of the finish. I don't necessarily want hard lines on all of those. So what I might do is, rather than go in again with the olive and the night, which are quite strong, I might just go in with something delicate like the Pebble Beach to just reinvigorate in a few places the detail of those lines. And before I do that, I'm just going to make sure this paint on the painting is completely dry. It's not wise to do too much with the heat tool when you've got something on the mat, partly because if it curls up too much, it might just shift position minimally and then you lose your reprinting. I've actually done that with olive, but never mind. I thought I was going to do Pebble Beach, and that isn't what was in my hand when I did that. There we go. So just refreshing the centres of some of those flowers. But for me, that is now a bit sort of too solid in some ways. I'm going to do one version off. If when you stamp that you have still got any paint left on there, because as I say, I didn't do too much with the heat tool, this is when you want to clean your stamp. If you've got ink on your stamp, it's not going to do anything. But if you get acrylic paint down into some of those detailed holes and spaces, that will affect the stamping detail of your next stamping. So just get some water in there, wipe it away while it's still wet. Much harder work if you let it dry on the stamp. There we go. So I've still got that paint there. I'm not going to waste that. I'll do that on my next stamping. So let's get you and you and you. Nice and quick. So this one, that one was all detailed and I was explaining everything I was doing. This one, I'm just going to get some painting done and get on a second little hydrangea flower here in the corner. Grand. So I'm going to come in again with my white just around these petals, again shaping to the petal that's in front of me. I've got an actual leaf on this one, so I might start with a bit of this frayed burlap, but I'm definitely going to give it, actually once it's out of the bottle it looks a lot less green. It's interesting. I've always assumed it had gone fully green on me, but now that it's here, it's actually rather pretty. I do love frayed burlap. It's a beautiful colour. Let's get some more white on, and then we'll put some watercolour over the top of there. So I'm being moderately careful not to mess up too much of the detail on these little flower petals. And that's when it helps to do the shape of the petal rather than just go over the whole flower head. So I'm sticking to the shape of what I can see in on my paper and allowing that to dictate how the brush goes down onto it. Let's put some more little white petals in the petiolaris bits. There we go. Maybe another little layer of white here. So you absolutely don't have to have a stamping platform, as you can see. It just requires a little bit more care and attention. And I think that's quite valuable as well. Is something that demands a bit more of our attention. You're much more likely to enter that much desired state of flow if you are giving something your full attention rather than just partial. That's already quite pretty. Going to come in with a little bit of my green off my palette. I'll also put a little bit of frayed burlap into the middle of those. Let's pick up a bit of this green that's on here. Just add that to the leaf. it to a couple of these stems, and done. It's meditation as far as I'm concerned. This is a form of meditation. Being in flow, you'll hear athletes and performers talking about it. It is a state where your whole focus is engaged in one thing and doing that one thing to the best of your ability at the time. And that's a really powerful form of meditation, to be completely immersed. There we go. I'm rather liking that sort of olivey colour against the pink sky background. I will, of course, take advantage of what's left here on the stamping platform to do just a little bit of white spatter. There we go. So another method for creating white flowers, this time over a busy background. It's perfectly possible to get yourself a stamped image and create a white background. That means you can then build layers of colour again from that starting point. You could, of course, if you want to paint those hydrangeas blue and purple, you could go straight in and paint those hydrangeas blue and purple. But as you've seen, white flowers are something I enjoy a good deal. So I just wanted to share in this little series some ways of making your flowers white. Thanks so much for your company, as always. If you've enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. Other videos to watch and ingredient lists will be in the description below. And if you're not already on this creative journey with us, we'd love to have your company. So do hit the subscribe button, and there's lots more in store. Thanks so much for your company, and happy crafting all.